Do we take our right to vote as women for granted? For many years, women had to work very hard with much determination to gain the right to vote. They took many actions that may seem drastic to us, but back in the 1800s to 1900s, they did what they felt was necessary. In the 1800s, many women took strong actions to have the right to vote, and one of these amazing women was Susan B. Anthony. Altogether, they worked to gain the 19th Amendment. According to Scholastic.com, suffragists were people who were campaigning to gain the right to vote for women. They were the leaders of the women, and they led them in marches and protests. These marches were also called parades. Two of the most well-known marches were held in Washington, D.C. and in New York. These two places show how much variety they had in where they held these marches, which gave the chance for everyone to join in and show their support. Time.com states that suffragists also arranged meetings to be held and protests. Protests were held to bring even more attention to the issue of women not being able to vote. One was held in Pennsylvania Avenue, and somewhere between 5,000 to 8,000 people showed to show their support. CRF.org mentions that suffragists held meetings to make the important decisions of what their plans of actions were. These were very effective and successful ways to gain the right to vote. Women owe their right to vote to the many determined suffragists. CRF.org continues on to give much information about Susan B. Anthony. She was born in 1829 and died in 1906, and she was born into a Quaker family. Due to being born into a Quaker family, she was a very independent and strong young woman. She joined many movements, and one of which was to end slavery in 1851. She also organized the National Women's Suffrage Association, which worked to gain an amendment for women's right to vote. They wanted to include women in the 15th Amendment. Unfortunately, they could not gain this goal, so they had to settle with the next best thing. Law.edu writes about the 19th Amendment. Suffragists had to fight for this right, and they did win, but they didn't win without a whole lot of life-changing events that contributed to gaining the right to vote. Two significant years of this movement were 1872 and 1890. In 1872, a brave suffragist brought many court challenges to show that the right to vote should be for all U.S. citizens and to defend Susan B. Anthony after she illegally voted as a woman. In 1890, Wyoming became the first state to allow women to vote, and then soon after that, Utah, Colorado, and Idaho joined in. And after much consideration and debating, in 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified. It took a lot of hard work to gain the right to vote, but luckily the women had many suffragists to lead them. Women had to sacrifice much of their time and effort to gain the right to vote, but they did in the end. They took strong actions, being led by amazing women such as Susan B. Anthony, and were able to vote legally in 1920 due to the addition of the 19th Amendment. Now, I ask you, could we bond together as strong young women to gain great achievements just as they did?